Welcome back to our podcast, where today we're exploring some of the fundamental concepts of statehood and sovereignty in Africa, particularly through the fascinating case study of South Sudan's independence. This is a topic that intertwines history, politics, and international relations, and we're delighted to unpack it with you today.
Absolutely. The journey to understand state sovereignty in Africa requires us to look at how the international community defines a state and the nuances of border durability. It's not just about what we see on a map. It's about the rights, recognitions, and relationships that shape a nation's existence.
Exactly. Let's start with the fundamental principle that every state, no matter how weak, has the inherent right to exist. This principle acts as a sort of survival guarantee, preventing larger nations from absorbing smaller, weaker states. It creates a situation where countries that perhaps shouldn't exist in terms of functionality, think of those with weak governance, can persist for decades.
Right, and that leads us to the idea of international recognition as a vital resource. When a country is officially recognized by others, it gains significant advantages, like access to international aid and a say in global discussions through entities like the United Nations.
And let's not forget the unique challenges that arise from separatist movements. In many cases, these groups find themselves caught in a treacherous incentive structure. Instead of seeking separation and risking lack of recognition, they often end up negotiating within the existing framework, which can exacerbate internal tensions.
It's a fascinating paradox, really. And when we look at the history of South Sudan, we can see these dynamics play out vividly. The country's journey to independence didn't happen in a vacuum, but against a backdrop of ongoing conflict and dissatisfaction, particularly between the northern Arab Muslim government and the southern Christian majority regions.
Yes, and it's important to touch on the historical context that led to South Sudan's independence. The civil war that hosted this struggle spanned decades. Key moments, such as the military coup in 1989 that brought Omar Hassan al-Bashir to power, complicate the narrative around the conflict.
And this coup wasn't just a political shift. It intensified the existing North-South divide, particularly as international interest peaked, especially from the United States, which identified Sudan as a substantial threat due to its alleged harboring of terrorists.
It's true. U.S. tensions escalated to dramatic moments like the 1998 cruise missile strike on a pharmaceutical plant in Khartoum, which was reported to be associated with chemical weapons. A clear example of how geopolitics dramatically impacts local conflicts.
Speaking of geopolitics, the emergence of oil in the late 1990s carved out another layer of complexity in this struggle. While it escalated violence in key regions, it also created an incentive for negotiations. It was a double-edged sword.
Absolutely. This was prominently evidenced in 2005 when the Comprehensive Peace Agreement was signed, establishing a promising power-sharing arrangement and leading to a referendum on independence. It's remarkable that over 99% of South Sudanese voted for secession in January 2011, isn't it?
And the fact that Khartoum accepted the results was significant, marking the acceptance of such a momentous change. South Sudan finally attained independence in July 2011, and the speed of its international recognition was impressive, attributed largely to its distinct administrative status dating back to the colonial period.
However, as we dive deeper, we uncover the unresolved tensions that remained between Sudan and South Sudan post-independence. From border disputes to military conflicts to economic challenges due to South Sudan's landlocked status, these issues are layered and still unresolved to this day.
That's right. Issues like the precise definition of borders, particularly the contentious Appiah area, have continuously been postponed for resolution. And don't forget about the military confrontations, such as the conflict over Heglig in 2012. These disputes underscore that independence didn't equate to peace.
The intersection of the Darfur conflict complicates the narrative even further, illustrating how localized grievances can spill over and transform into broader issues. Marginalized groups in regions like Darfur raised critical points during and post-negotiations, asking why they were left out of the peace processes that favored the South.
In fact, The emergence of rebel movements in Darfur is one of the most tragic outcomes of the government's response to these demands for autonomy. The violence was staggering, leading to hundreds of thousands of deaths and millions displaced, pushing more refugees into neighboring South Sudan, a crisis that compounded the challenges already faced by the newborn nation.
And this theme of internal conflict is critical. Following independence, South Sudan plunged into its own civil war shortly after in 2013. The spiraling tensions between President Salva Kiir and former VP Riek Machar transitioned from a power struggle to an ethnic conflict involving their respective communities, the Dinka and Nuer.
This transformation from a political to an ethnic conflict not only reshaped the internal dynamics of South Sudan, but created a humanitarian catastrophe. By mid-2017, we were looking at staggering figures: 50,000 deaths, millions displaced, and a population grappling with severe food shortages.
This situation illuminates a critical insight we cannot overlook. The partitioning of Sudan didn't resolve the core power struggles. Instead, it transferred them from domestic to international arenas, showcasing the inadequacies of colonial borders in settling deep-rooted conflicts.
While discussing South Sudan, we cannot ignore how superpower dynamics played out in Africa. The Cold War's influential backdrop saw both the Soviet Union and the United States engage with African states, seeking partnerships, yet complicating local politics.
Indeed, the Soviet Union under Khrushchev started positioning itself as a supporter of liberation movements, thus complicating prospects for nations seeking independence. The U.S., on one hand, grappled with its ideological stance against colonialism, but still hesitated, leading to a diplomatic paralysis.
As newly independent states emerged, their leaders recognized the precarious balance between claiming autonomy and maintaining stability. The differing priorities of factions within these nations highlighted the complex motivations behind seeking foreign aid and aligning with superpowers.
And in all this, we should remember that Africa wasn't simply a pawn in a superpower game. African leaders engaged in a calculated game of influence, leveraging power relations between superpowers to strengthen their own positions at home.
In summary, our exploration of state sovereignty and border durability in Africa leads us to realize that the continent's political landscape is shaped by a fusion of internal dynamics and external influences. From South Sudan's independence to the Cold War engagements, each layer adds depth to our understanding of African political realities.
Thank you for joining us on this intellectual journey today. We hope you leave with a deeper appreciation of the complexities surrounding African statehood, the historical influences that shape it, and the ongoing challenges many nations face.